Okay, this video is called Knowledge Management Systems, and this is about becoming an expert. And I'm going to show you a few things that help me to learn what does it take to become a real expert. Okay, so first of all, I just show you a couple pictures from when I was in college at Stanford University. This was my coach, Dave Schultz. Also, his brother, Mark Schultz, was the other coach. He's a world and Olympic champion, NCAA champion, and he was about my size, so I used to have to wrestle him in practice, and he used to beat the crap out of me. Okay, I was a pretty good guy, one victory away from being an All-American. I set the all-time school record for victories in a season at 39. I was team captain, that sort of thing. I was student athlete of the year at Stanford University. Here's another guy who I used to have to compete against almost every day, national champion, All-American. So I was used to getting beat up a lot, and it pissed me off because I had injuries. I was a great wrestler in high school, and I had tremendous potential, okay? But I had repeated injuries. I'd come back, and I'd get re-injured. And so I was very frustrated by that. I'm used to being the best. I didn't like being kind of low man on the totem pole. My other training partner was also an All-American, okay? And my other training partner was also an All-American. So I spent my time around a bunch of All-Americans, okay, really good guys. And it pissed me off that I was, again, used to being the best, and all of a sudden now I was the worst guy in the group, and it pissed me off so much when I was alone I'd cry by myself. This is the wall of fame we had in the wall, one of the fraternity rooms, where the Schultz brothers are on top, and then we put posters of ourselves because we would be in the newspapers for winning victories and stuff like that's me, you know, beating some guy. Here's another victory of mine. So we wanted to rise up on the wall of fame, and it kept your goals focused. Every day you wake up and you see on the wall, you know, your pictures, and it motivated us, okay? And I noticed how this guy, Dave Schultz, wasn't that good of an athlete. He just made himself a great wrestler. Here is Mark Schultz, his brother, who was a better athlete, but he had health problems of his own, like he had a low VO2 max. And how does he compensate for that when he's wrestling guys like University of Iowa? Here he is wrestling Ed Bannock, you know, three-time NCAA champ. And Mark Schultz, who don't got much of a Iowa's famous, by the way, for having incredible VO2 max and endurance. Mark Schultz figured out how to beat him. And I saw how he kept on raising his level of intensity and mental toughness. And then here's Dave Schultz. And he kept on improving his technique to get better and better. So anyways, as much as it pissed me off that I wasn't as good of a wrestler as I used to be, I kept coming back to CERN getting re-injured. I should have redshirted, and my father pressured me not to, and I wimped out, and I didn't tell my dad to screw off. I should have gone another year, and I would have been an All-American. But anyways, I learned from that mistake and said I am not going to let myself screw up in academics. So this is me in medical school, graduated first in my class, 99% boards, med school and residency. I wrote a book about it, Medical Students Guide to Top Board Scores. I later wrote multiple different books on study skills, raising cognitive performance, cognitive achievement, and stuff like that. You know, straight A at Stanford on to Harvard, Underground Guide to Study Skills, How to Raise IQ, Become a Genius, Food, Mood, and IQ, all this stuff. And now as a neuroradiologist, one of the main things that I do, I spend a tremendous amount of time understanding how does one optimize brain performance and what lowers brain performance, okay? So these are just more books I wrote about cognitive performance, rhyme, rhetoric, and logic, a student version of study skills, another one, and food, mood, and IQ, all this stuff on those related topics. So here's the big food, mood, and IQ. We don't need to look at that. Okay, here's just a picture of my bathroom when I took my neuroradiology boards. I was told unofficially I had gotten a perfect score on it. I would just put pictures of all these things to remind myself. Every time I go to my bathroom, I'd see these things. And of course, this is a bathroom basement back in my old great house, the one I loved. Okay, so anyways, just a few more here, and I'm going to get to the concept of knowledge management. Here would be like I called it the magic bathroom because I learned so much stuff in there. I'd always have usually a big book on the table that I would read during the number 2, and then a little book during number 1s. And I always read a paperback book every week still, or sometimes I'll read research papers in the bathroom, but I read tons and tons of stuff. Because people always say, I'm too busy to read, I'm too busy. No, you're not. You got to go to the bathroom. You're going to read. You can listen to an audiobook in the car. I automatically read a minimum of 2 books a week by just an audiobook in the car and a paperback in the bathroom, okay? So I get through tons of books. Okay, I used to have flashcards in there. This is a Lightner box system, a form of spaced interval repetition. I sometimes would make posters, like posters of the differential diagnosis. For example, IAC, CPA angle tumors, internal auditory canal, cerebellopontine angle tumors. So I'd make a picture card of that. Differential diagnosis for different areas. That was one of the things I did. You know, we talked about flashcards. I had other types of study methods, but I want to show you though is this one. This is probably the most valuable one to see. So I use outline format books for memorizing stuff for med school and residency, and that way you got a nice big index, and it's an easy way to find stuff because it's outline alphabet format. These are all mnemonics, acronyms for memorizing diseases and anatomical regions. Later on, when I got more advanced for neuroradiology boards, I used what I call color condensed notes or illustrated condensed notes. I just taped all the different pictures from multiple different journals and books into one spot so I could find everything quickly. That's how I did that. Okay, now we're going to get to what was the whole point of this talk. I want to talk about knowledge, encoding, and management. This is going to be real fast, but this is highly valuable because, see, a lot of people tell me, oh, who needs all this stuff? You know, I got A's and B's in high school. And what I'm trying to tell you is, I'm not talking about that level of performance. I'm talking about, the average student at Stanford is like 99.5 percentile in a pre-med class. I get A pluses in those classes, first in med school class. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm talking about the highest possible level you could get in academic performance and cognitive stuff, because you want to be good at what you do. And the more you know all these techniques, the faster you're going to learn stuff, and the better you're going to preserve that information. So, courses rote memorization, which is a weak method. Context and meaning, the more you make it meaningful, the more memorable it becomes to you, the more understandable. Word association tricks, they're helpful in the beginning. Mnemonics, like acronyms, where you have the first letter of all the words that are combined things. That's all good. But I want to start getting into more powerful things, making metaphors, analogies, especially a visual metaphor. Like if you've seen my lectures on plasma membrane ion pumps, the idea that sodium was the angry mob trying to break into the cell, that calcium was the aristocrat or the wife who was unreasonable, bossing everybody around. Okay, that potassium was the blue-collar worker getting the job done, and magnesium was the hero. Okay, once you see the ions like that, all of this neurophysiology will become real easy. Until you see that, you'll keep getting them confused. But once you see it that way, you can learn plasma membrane ion pumps, how a cell gets its work done, and you can learn neurophysiology, epilepsy, all this stuff very easily. Cardiac contractility, EKGs, all of that stuff. Once you get that metaphor, it becomes easy. Okay, putting things into a narrative, a story, a chronological order, a sequential order, that's all makes you have a better, stronger memory. I would use mnemonics, of course, for biochemistry cycles, and once I had the mnemonic for all the, let's say, the substrates, then it was easy to memorize the enzymes and the cofactors. Okay, causation. And now here's what I'm getting at for true expertise in the real world. The most powerful thing is really causation, knowing what causes what. And that's the point you want to get to if you want to become a true high-level expert. So like when somebody comes and asks me, they show me a brain or show me a chest, a neck, a abdomen, whatever, and tell me about a patient's disease and stuff, and I have to put it all together. I need to know what causes what and how do I help the patient get better and what needs to be done next, okay? So that level of knowledge is like the highest level of expertise, having a giant case file of situations and having knowledge of what causes what. That makes you very strong in that domain of knowledge. For long-term retrieval, you need some type of copy of the information. So we talked about spaced interval repetitions systems being useful for keeping it fresh in your memory, but it's good to have it written down somewhere. Either have condensed notes, like outline format's very powerful. Illustrated condensed notes, I showed you that. I like having a hard copy because your computer could crash. You could lose your computer, and you could have Anki flashcards or something, and they delete your Anki account, you're screwed. So you want to have a hard copy of it. And a lot of what I'll make is a computer system of what I would call Feynman-like notes. In a sense, I start writing a book in my own, like about diabetes, about hypertension, about atherosclerosis. And then I'll often write a book myself. If I'm really interested in a subject like I was in those subjects, I'll write a book about each one of those things. So anyways, this idea, I realized this sounded pretty simple, but I don't know, hardly anyone does this. The great geniuses of the past would often do something like this. Like Thomas Jefferson would talk about his form of a notebook like this to keep track of all his information. So these are powerful techniques. So if you're interested in becoming a high-level expert in your field, I think this will help you. And becoming a top-notch student, this will help you. So, all right, well, good luck with that.